Hi guys, it's Charlotte, and as you can see at my back, I've got many books. So I've accumulated around 30 to 40 books over the past 3 months, but I've only read like 2 or 3 of them. So I thought I might as well do a book video to talk you through the books that I've got. Most of them are classics, like this pile here and this pile here are all classics, and then this is a stack of books that I'm going to be reading for this Christmas, and then that is a pile of just contemporary books like fictions and non-fictions. And I'll also read you the first sentences of all the books that I've got here, so we can not judge the book by its cover but by its first sentence. By the way, this is a Christmas tree toy from Jellycat, and that's their rabbit, and I think they're so cute, so I just put them on books. I want to start off with The Tenant of Wildfell by Brontë, which I finished a couple of days ago. And it's part diary, part epistolary, and I rate it 5 stars, and I think you should read it too because it's really great. I think it might be my favorite Bronte's book. So I've watched a debate hosted by Intelligence Squared, which I'll link it down below. It's called Jane Austen versus Emily Brontë, the Queens of English Literature debate. And inspired by that debate, I thought I might as well start a reading project called Austen versus Brontë, where I'll be reading all the books by Jane Austen and the Brontë sisters. And my plan is to read 1 or 2 books by these authors every month. And I've got a bookish Instagram account where I post my updates and everything, just, to hold myself accountable. And I will link my account down below so that, if you want to follow me, feel free to. And also I'll put my reading schedule in the description box, so feel free to join me. Just realized I didn't read you the first sentence of this book, so here it is. It begins with a letter addressed to the friend of the protagonist. Dear Hawthorne, when we were together last, you gave me a very particular and interesting account of the most remarkable occurrences of early life previous to our acquaintance, and then you requested a return of confidence from me. And next book that is related to my reading project is Emma by Jane Austen, which I'll read in December. And the first time I read the book was like 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't like it. Or I should say I wasn't able to appreciate the book. But this book is a very classic Jane Austen book. It's about romantic misunderstandings and misadventures, which is the type of theme that is explored in a lot of Austen's other books like Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. And this book, I'll just read you what's at the back. I wonder what will become of her. So speculate the friends and neighbours of Emma Woodhouse, the lively, willful and fallible heroine of Jane Austen's 4th published novel. Confident that she knows best, Emma schemes to find a suitable husband for her blind friend Harriet, only to discover that she understands the feelings of others as little as she does her own heart. The reader shares in her intuitions and blunders as she learns that her social world is more mysterious than she thought. Austen brilliantly creates this world, a cast of inadvertently comic characters and a subtly implied portrait of a small town undergoing social change. And the first sentence of the book is Volume 1, Chapter 1. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. And for the books mentioned, I've got them in the gorgeous Chiltern Classics edition. Oh my god, they're both gilded. So this is Emma, and this is what it looks like at the back, and it's got a little synopsis here. And this is The Tenant of Wildfell, and this is the back. So I got these 2 books when they were on sale. Each book was like $15, which is around like $10 US. And I had a chat with the staff at the bookstore the other day, and we both agreed that these books are not ideal for reading and annotating, because first of all it's quite heavy, and each page, as you can see, it's like this kind of texture. It's like very smooth, so it's very slippery to write on, and I mean you wouldn't want to write on pages like this. So they're just for like collecting. I've got like around 12 books in this edition on my bookshelf, and I got all of them when they're on sale. So yeah, that's the first 2 books in the Chiltern Classics. And the next book in the Chiltern Classics edition is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, and it looks like this. This is the side view, and it matches my outfit as well. I haven't read it yet, so I only know that it's about Fanny Price, who is sent by her impoverished family to the household of a wealthy aunt and uncle, and we follow her into her adulthood and everything. And the first sentence of the book is Chapter 1. About 30 years ago, Miss Maria Ward of Huntingdon, with only £7,000, had the good luck to captivate Sir Thomas Bertram of Mansfield Park in the county of Northampton, and to be thereby raised to the rank of a baronet's lady, with all the comforts and consequences of a handsome house and large income. So I was a bit shocked by the title here, and handsome house, and I had a chat with some friends on Instagram yesterday, and they told me it was just some old English, and this typo is also present in Penguin Classics edition, so I think it's probably not the publisher's mistake. I think it was just written like this when it was published in the 19th century. And the last book in this edition is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Looks like this. And it tells a very tragic story. It's about our young protagonist Tess. She's very innocent. She is seduced by a dissolute guy called Alec d'Urberville, and she secretly bears her child, who dies in infancy. And later she meets and marries the gentleman called Angel Clare, and on their wedding night Tess tells him everything about her past, and he rejects her as a result. So it's a really sad story. And the first sentence of the book is: Face the First, the Maiden. Chapter 1. On an evening in the later part of May, a middle-aged man was walking homeward from Sheston to the village of Marlott, in the adjoining vale of Blakemore or Blackmore. So that's the last book of Chiltern Classics. And now let's move on to this deck of Christmas books, and I'm going to take this away. Alright, this one is actually not a Christmas book. It's Moominvalley in November, and it's just very suitable for this month. It's full of sweet, cute autumn vibes, and it captures that kind of seasonal melancholy. And I highly recommend you get to this one even it's in December, because there are some chapters about snow. Yeah, I think it's really perfect for this time of year, although I'm in Australia and it's actually spring here, but it's really, really cold. So I just pretended that it was autumn when I was reading the book. Oh, and also because this book is a children's book, so it's illustrated. This is like a map of the Moominvalley, and this is probably like one of my favorite illustrations in this book. And I'll read you the first sentence of the book. Chapter 1, Snufking. Early one morning in Moominvalley, Snufking woke up in his tent with a feeling that autumn had come and that it was time to break camp. So the first Christmas book is the Penguin Book of Christmas Stories, and it consists of 33 Christmas stories by many different famous authors. And my plan is to read one story every day as a countdown for Christmas. And I'll read you the first sentence of the first story, which is: The Fir Tree by Hans Christian Andersen. Out in the forest stood such a charming fir tree. Oh, actually, I'll read you the first 3 sentences of A Christmas Party and a Wedding by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The other day I saw a wedding. But no, I better tell you about the Christmas party. The wedding was nice, I liked it very much, but the other event was better. I just had dinner, so I'm setting up right now, but so we were talking about this book, and I wanted to talk more about Dostoevsky because he's my one only favorite author, and I would recommend his short stories to everyone because first of all, they are very fun to read. They are very different to his larger works like Crime and Punishment, which is really heavy, and in his short works you can get a glimpse into his creative power and profundity of thought. And the second reason is that many of the characters in his larger works are actually based on the characters in his shorter stories. So I think the best place to start with Dostoevsky is this one, The Best Short Stories of Fyodor Dostoevsky. Moving on, I have A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which I know nothing of. I think this can be a great Christmas gift for your friends if they like books. And again, this book matches my jacket. And I'm trying to not look into what the story is about so I can have a blind date with this book, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be good. I'm going to read you the... so there's a preface in this book, so I'm going to read you the preface and the first sentence of the book. Preface. I have endeavoured in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humour with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their house pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, C.D., December 1843. Oh my god, stories written like almost 180 years ago. Okay, the first sentence of the book. Chapter 1, Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead to begin with. So that's A Christmas Carol. Moving on, I have The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding by Agatha Christie. I've never read anything by her before, so I just don't know why it has taken me so long to get my hands on her books, and I'm gonna read it for this Christmas because I've heard so many good things about it. And I'm just gonna read you the little synopsis at the back. An English country house at Christmas time, with its crackling log fires and fine food, may seem an incongruous setting for a crime. But a sinister note left on his pillow warns Hercule Poirot. Okay, but a sinister note left on his pillow warns Hercule Poirot to be on his guard. It is the first of 5 baffling cases for Poirot. It is followed by a corpse in a Spanish chest, a quarrel that led to murder, a dead man who altered his eating habits, a victim who dreamt his own suicide, and for the icing on the cake, a 6th story featuring Miss Marple and her visit to Greenshaw's Folly. Wait. Oh, I see. There are 6 stories in this book, and The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding is the first one. So I'm going to read you the first sentence of The Adventure of Christmas Pudding, which is the first story of this book. I regret exceedingly, said Hercule Poirot. Alright, the last Christmas book that I have is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and the story is about the competition and love affair between 2 young magicians. And the first sentence of the book is Unexpected Post, New York, February 1873. The man billed as Prospero the Enchanter receives a fair amount of correspondence via the theatre office, but this is the first envelope addressed to him that contains a suicide note, and it is also the first to arrive carefully pinned to the coat of a 5-year-old girl. And on what I just read you is what comes after part 1, which is this page, and this is the first sentence of the story, but not the first sentence of the book. And the first sentence of the book comes before this part, and it's in the chapter called Anticipation. The circus arrives without warning. Alright, I've got 3 books from Penguin Modern Classics, and the first one is Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima, and this is one that I'm the most excited about. And I'll read you what's at the back. A Japanese teenager is overcome with longing for his male classmate. He imagines his body punctured with arrows, like the body of Saint Sebastian in the painting that obsesses him. Over and over again, each night in his private fantasies, the objects of his lust are tortured, killed, and maimed. But in the rigid world of imperial wartime Japan, there's no place for such transgressive desires. He must wear a false mask and hide his true nature, whatever the cost. This is giving me, Giovanni's Rooms vibes, which is another book in this edition, and I rated 5 stars. I like it very much, and I mentioned it in my August wrap-up, and I would highly recommend that book. The first sentence of this book is 1. For many years, I claimed I could remember things seen at the time of my own birth. And then let's move on to The Outsider by Albert Camus. I don't know if I read his name right because he is a French author, I believe. Oh, okay, just looked up. He is a French philosopher. And I didn't look into what this book is about because it's only 110 pages long, so I'm just afraid that Googling it might spoil the book. So I'm just going to read you the first 2 sentences of the book because they are quite well known. 1. My mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I don't know. And the last book that I have in this edition is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And I bought it for this Halloween, but didn't get to it, so I'll save it for the next one. And at the back it says, Alone in the world, Eleanor is delighted to take Dr. Montague's invitation to spend the summer in the mysterious Hill House. Joining them are Theodora, an artistic sensitive, and Luke, heir to the house. But what begins as a light-hearted experiment is swiftly proven to be a trip into their darkest nightmares, and an invitation that one of their number may not survive. And oh yes, I'll read you the first 3 sentences of the book, which is just everything over here. No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed, by some, to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its heels, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks matched neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. Right, so that's The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Alright, let's come back down. The next book that I have is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I've actually read this book earlier this year, but I was studying and working at the same time, so it took me 2 months to finish this book, and I read it just for the sake of reading it, so that's why I bought a new book, just so that I can start afresh and read it again. And this book, the title is Anna Karenina, but this is really a misleading book title because Anna's story is just the tip of an iceberg. So half of the story centers on the extramarital affair between Anna and Count Vronsky, and another half is the love story between Levin and Kitty. And Levin is the story's co-protagonist, and he's also Leo Tolstoy's alter ego, because Tolstoy's Russian name is Lev, spelled L-E-V, and hence the name Levin. And yes, the first sentence of this book is really famous. All happy families resemble one another. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Alright, the next book is The Idiot by Dostoevsky, and this is one of his most important works because Dostoevsky was first sentenced to death and he was supposed to be executed by a firing squad. At the very last moment of his life, like when he was facing a firing squad and with the blindfold on his eyes, his sentence was commuted by the Tsar, and he was sentenced actually to 4 years of hard labor in Siberia. So that moment, that kind of near-death experience had a huge impact on Dostoevsky, and he described the experience of what he believed to be the last moment of his life in this book. And this book called The Idiot is not about an actual idiot, but it's about a very innocent prince called Mishkin. And I'll read you what's at the back. Into a compelling real portrait of 19th century Russian society, Dostoevsky introduces his ideal hero, the saintly Prince Mishkin. The tensions subsequently unleashed by the hero's innocence, truthfulness, and humility betray the inadequacy of his moral idealism and disclose the spiritual emptiness of society that cannot accommodate him. Mishkin's mission ends in idiocy and darkness, but it is the world that is rotten, not he. And the first sentence of the book is, at around 9 in the morning, towards the end of a thawing November, the Warsaw train was approaching Petersburg at full steam. And also, there's a map in this book, in this edition, which is the Oxford World Classics edition. Next up, this is another book by Dostoevsky, Notes from a Dead House, or Notes from the House of the Dead. I think that's another translation. And this book is his prison memoir, and it details his 4 years spent in a Siberian prison camp. Notes from a Dead House tells of shocking conditions, brutal punishments, and the psychological effects of the loss of freedom and hope. It describes the daily life of the prison community, the feuds and betrayals, the moments of comedy, the unexpected acts of kindness. And the first sentence of the book is, in the remote parts of Siberia, amidst steppes, mountains, or impenetrable forests, you occasionally happen upon small towns of 1, or, at the most, 2,000 inhabitants, wooden, unsightly, with 2 churches, one in town, the other in the cemetery, towns that look more like a good-sized village near Moscow than a town. The last book that I have by Dostoevsky is Crime and Punishment, and I've read it once, but I got this one because I think the translation is better. I'll put his name somewhere on the screen. And well, so this book is basically about a law student, a 23-year-old law student called Raskolnikov. He is very devoted to his mother and sister, and when he learns that his sister is gonna marry a rich scoundrel so that he can afford university, he decides that he will murder this rich pawnbroker, because in doing so he believes that he can save his sister and he can afford university, and also he can use money to help those who are in need. That's how what's going on in the first part, and then there are 6 other parts that deals with his just internal struggles and everything. And the first sentence of the book is, one evening in early July, during a spell of exceptionally hot weather, a young man came out of the garret he rented from the tenants of a flat in S Lane, went downstairs to the street and set off, slowly and rather uncertainly, towards K Bridge. And another great thing about this book in this edition, this is the Oxford World Classics edition, is that it has got a map and tells you where the main character lives and where the murder takes place, because Dostoevsky keeps referring to the street names and everything like that, so I was just really confused. So I think it's good to have this kind of visual aid. And then I've got 3 books in the Penguin English Library edition, and the first one I'll talk about is 10 Days Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I bought this book because I wanted to learn more about the author's life, and this book is semi-autobiographical, so it's perfect. And the story sets on the French Riviera in the 1920s, and this book shows the broken reality beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect marriage. And the main characters of the book is the couple Dick and Nicole, and in the book Dick descends into alcoholism and Nicole descends into mental illness, which mirrors the events in the lives of Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda. So that's Tenant's Night, and the first sentence of the book is: on the pleasant shore of the French Riviera, about halfway between Marseille and the Italian border, stands a large, proud, rose-colored hotel. And the next book is Moby-Dick, and I haven't read it yet, but I know it's a story about a sailor's revenge against a white whale, which is called Moby-Dick. And the first sentence of the book is Mishima, which I know because it's one of my favorites. Alright, the last Penguin English Library book is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it is about a woman who conceives a daughter with a man to whom she is not married, and she is imprisoned and publicly shamed because of that, and she's also forced to wear a scarlet A for committing adultery, and we follow her struggle to create a new life of repentance and dignity. The first sentence of the book is Chapter 1, The Prison Door. A throng of bearded men in sad-coloured garments and grey steeple-crowned hats, intermixed with women, some wearing hoods and others bareheaded, was assembled in front of a wooden edifice, the door of which was heavily timbered with oak and studded with iron spikes. And then I have a Penguin Cloth Bound, which is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. And from what I know, this is a book about an orphan that is forced into a life of unjust working conditions and pushed into crime to survive, which is a real tragedy. The first sentence of the book is Book the First. Chapter the First treats of the place where Oliver Twist was born and of the circumstances attending his birth. Among other public buildings in the town of Mudfolk, it boasts of one which is common to most towns, great or small, to wit, a workhouse. And in this workhouse there was born on a day and a date, which I need not trouble myself to repeat, inasmuch as it can be of no possible consequence to the reader. In this stage of business at all events, the item of morality whose name is prefixed to the head of this chapter. And the last classics that I've got here is The Letters of Abelard and Héloïse, and in today's language it could be called a teacher-student romance, only it took place in the 12th century and wasn't romantic at all. So Peter Abelard was the tutor of the 19-year-old Héloïse, and he was like nearly 20 years her senior. So Abelard impregnated Héloïse, and Héloïse's guardian was so mad about it and plotted revenge against him, and Abelard was seized and castrated. And this book, I think, just details how everything happened and all that stuff. So this book consists of 8 letters, I believe, and I'm going to read you the first sentence of the first letter. Letter 1. Abelard to a friend. The story of his misfortunes. There are times when example is better than precept for stirring or soothing human feelings, and so I propose to follow up the words of consolations I gave you in person with a story of my own misfortunes, hoping thereby to give you comfort in absence. Alright, I'm gonna go through the rest of the books quickly because I've been talking for like an hour and a half. So over here I have Interview with the Vampire, and I bought this one because I saw Ruby Granger mention this book in her book recommendation video. I'll link it down below because I really liked it and watched it twice. So the first sentence of the book is, I see, said the vampire thoughtfully, and slowly he walked across the room towards the window. And next one is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and this is the 50th anniversary edition. And the first sentence of the book is, it was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and didn't know what I was doing in New York. Next book is The Secret History, and I watched an interview yesterday with the author, and she mentioned that it took her like around 9 years to complete this book. I will link it down below. And it's about, I believe, a group of students, 6 students studying Greek, and it is narrated by one of them who recounts the events that have led up to the murder of one of them. The first sentence of the book is Chapter 1. Does such a thing as the fatal flaw, that showy dark crack running down the middle of the life, exist outside literature? Oh, remember, I was at the bookstore the other day and I didn't know if I should buy this book, so I looked it up on Goodreads and I saw that Alice Oseman rated it 5 stars and she said I can't. So I was like, okay, I'm sold. Next book that I'm super scared to start is A Little Life. And I watched so many reading vlogs surrounding this book and everyone just couldn't handle it and they were a puddle. It's like the book destroyed them, and I don't know if I should do a reading vlog surrounding this book just to document my reading journey. Okay, I'll just read you the first sentence of the book. The 11th apartment had only one closet, but it did have a sliding glass door that opened onto a small balcony from which he could see a man sitting across the way, outdoors in only a t-shirt and shorts, even though it was October, smoking. Next up, I have Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. Someone on Instagram recommended me this book and she told me I would definitely like it, so that's why I just bought it. Like, it just took me 10 seconds to place the order on Amazon. I just didn't really know much about this book. I'll read you the first sentence of it. Chapter 1, A Death and a Birth, 1797 to 1801. On a sunny afternoon in late August 1801, a few miles north of London, 3-year-old Mary Godwin held her father's hand as they walked through the gates of St. Pancras churchyard. So half of the book is the life of Mary Wollstonecraft, another half is the life of Mary Shelley. And at the beginning there's a quote, "The memory of my mother has always been the pride and delight of my life." Mary Shelley. The next book is a memoir called Everything I Know About Love. The first sentence of the book is, "Everything I knew about love as a teenager. Romantic love is the most important and exciting thing in the entire world." Next up, I have Circe by Madeline Miller, and my pen pal recommended me this book, so I just bought it immediately. And I also have read The Song of Achilles by the same author, and I loved it so much, so I have just huge expectations for this book as well. And the first sentence of the book is, Chapter 1. When I was born, the name for what I was did not exist. The next one is the children's book, The Girl Who Drank the Moon. I got it because Emma from her YouTube channel, Emmy, mentioned it in her 2021 wrap-up, and it is one of her favorite books from 2021, so I bought it. And the first sentence of the book is Chapter 1, in which a story is told. Yes, just one word. The last book in today's book haul is the highly anticipated The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is an LGBT book and this is one of my favorite genres. I'll read you what's at the back. Linus Baker leads a quiet life. At 40, he has a tiny house with a devious cat and his beloved records for company. And at the department in charge of magical youth, he spent many dull years monitoring their orphanages. Then one day, Linus is summoned by extremely upper management and given a highly classified assignment. He must travel to an orphanage where 6 dangerous children reside, including the Antichrist. There, Linus must somehow determine if they could bring on the end of days. But their guardian, charming and enigmatic Arthur Paracelsus, will do anything to protect his wards. As Arthur and Linus grow ever closer, Linus must choose between duty and his dreams. And the first sentence of the book is 1. "Oh dear," Linus Baker said, wiping the sweat from his brow. Alright, the last 2 books are not very exciting. The first one is The Body Keeps the Score. This is by a Dutch psychiatrist. It's about how trauma affects your body, mind, and the wiring of your brain, and how to, use things like yoga and play to, recover from your trauma. And it's all evidence-based. And this book is kind of like a textbook and you need to take notes and everything. So I read it in September and then just didn't read it. So I feel like I just need to commit to this book for like a week or so just to finish it and to take notes. Alright, the last book is a Russian textbook. It's the New Penguin Russian course, because my favorite author is Dostoevsky and I really wanted to read his books in Russian, so I wanted to start studying Russian next year, and I will use this book and I'll also use Duolingo and just see how it goes. And I think after I'm done with 2/3 of the book, I'm just gonna start memorizing Russian words because my goal is to be able to read, not to speak or write. So that's all I have. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to take a shower and sleep. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and I'll see you in my next one. Ciao!